Welcome to this deep dive. It's all about mastery,
Hmm.
and not just like the how-to of some specific skill, but mastery as like a way of being,
Right.
a whole approach to life.
Yeah.
And our guide for this journey is going to be George Leonard's book, Mastery. And believe me, this goes way deeper than your average self-help book.
Yeah. It's a really fascinating book. What I think is so interesting about it is that he starts by tackling this thing that I think so many of us struggle with, which is that our society is so obsessed with quick fixes and instant results.
Yeah.
Like he uses this great example of a bestseller from the 80s called Total Fitness in 12 Minutes a Week.
Oh, okay. Even the title makes me skeptical.
Exactly.
But it perfectly illustrates the point, right? This idea that we can somehow like bypass the hard work and fast track our way to success.
Right.
I mean, think about it. How many times have you fallen for that kind of promise?
More often than I'd like to admit, I'm sure. But Leonard's argument is that this quick fix mentality is actually setting us up for failure when it comes to like true mastery.
So what does he define as true mastery then?
Well, it's not just about reaching some arbitrary level of skill, right?
Right.
It's about this commitment to continuous growth, embracing like the entire journey and recognizing that mastery is a process that unfolds over time.
Okay, so that sounds a lot like that mastery curve he talks about with all those
Yeah.
upward spurts and the frustrating plateaus.
Exactly. And that's where it gets really interesting, I think, because he says that those plateaus are not just something to endure.
Okay.
They're actually where the real magic happens. That's when you're deepening your understanding and refining your skills and integrating what you've learned.
Yeah, it's funny. I remember hitting a plateau in my Aikido training a while back, and I was so frustrated because I felt like I wasn't making any progress. But looking back, that's when I was really starting to internalize the movements and develop a deeper understanding of the art.
That's a perfect example of what he's talking about. He uses this anecdote about this tennis instructor. She's telling her student, if you want to truly master this, it's going to take about 5 years of consistent practice.
5 years.
5 years. Most people would give up before they even start.
Yeah. But the master, Leonard argues, embraces those 5 years. They understand that mastery isn't about speed. It's about persistence and dedication and like falling in love with the process itself.
Exactly. And that leads to those fascinating character sketches that he introduces. The dabbler, the obsessive, the hacker, and of course the master.
Yeah.
And they represent different approaches to learning and achieving goals, each with their own distinct pattern.
So picture these graphs, right? The dabbler starts with all this enthusiasm, their line's shooting up, but then they get bored, the line dips down, and they're off to the next shiny object. Sound familiar?
Oh yeah, it's such a common pattern.
Yeah.
The dabbler craves novelty and excitement, but lacks the staying power to see things through. They may achieve a superficial level of competence in many areas, but they never experience the depth and satisfaction of true mastery.
Right, right. Then you've got the obsessive. Their graph is a roller coaster. Intense effort, quick progress, burnout, crash. It's all about results, but it's unsustainable and it leads to disappointment in the long run.
And what's so interesting about that is that the obsessive often isn't lacking motivation or talent.
Yeah.
They often have an abundance of both.
Right.
But it's their fear of failure and this need for external validation that drives them to push too hard too fast. And ultimately, they end up sabotaging their own progress.
And then there's the hacker, their graph, basically a flat line. They've learned the basics just enough to get by, and they're content to stay there.
Yeah.
No growth, no challenge, just comfortable mediocrity.
The hacker values efficiency and practicality above all else.
Yeah.
They may even pride themselves on their ability to kind of like hack the system, find the shortcuts. But I think deep down, there's often this fear of taking risks, a fear of pushing beyond their comfort zone and truly testing their limits.
It's like they're settling for a black and white sketch when they could be creating a vibrant masterpiece.
Precisely. And then that brings us to the master. Their graph shows steady, consistent progress over time, marked by those upward spurts and inevitable plateaus. But the key difference is, the master understands that those plateaus are an essential part of the journey.
Right.
They embrace the entire process, recognizing that setbacks and challenges are actually opportunities for growth and refinement.
It's like they've got this inner compass that guides them even when the path gets tough or they feel lost. I'd love to have that kind of unshakable focus.
Yeah, and Leonard suggests that that's something we can cultivate. Not through some like magical formula, but through understanding and applying these 5 keys to mastery that he outlines in the book.
Oh, this is where it gets really interesting.
Yeah.
each of these keys is like a tool for unlocking our potential, for navigating the challenges of the mastery journey, and for achieving a level of skill and understanding we never thought possible.
Yeah. The first key, and it's a crucial one, is instruction.
Okay.
Finding a great teacher.
Yeah.
A mentor who can guide you and challenge you and help you see beyond your own limitations.
And he emphasizes it's not just about finding someone with fancy credentials or anything like that. It's about finding a teacher who truly understands the art of teaching, who can inspire you, nurture your growth, and meet you where you are on your journey.
Yeah, he tells a story from his own experience as a flight instructor during World War II.
Wow.
He had these 4 students, and 2 of them were like incredibly talented, just like soaring through the training.
Mm-hmm.
But the other 2 were really struggling.
Oh.
And initially, he focused all his attention on the star students, pushing them to achieve like maximum performance.
Okay.
Well, kind of neglecting the ones who needed more guidance.
It's like he was so focused on the outcome, on creating these Top Gun pilots, that he lost sight of the individual needs of each student.
Exactly. And it wasn't until later that he realized the importance of working effectively with all types of learners.
Okay.
A truly great teacher embraces the ones who struggle, recognizing that everyone has their own unique path to mastery.
That's such a powerful shift in perspective.
Yeah.
And it leads perfectly into the second key, which is practice. But it's not just about mindlessly putting in the hours, it's about how we practice.
Right.
It's about finding joy in the repetition, being fully present in each moment, and constantly seeking deeper understanding.
Yeah. There's this great anecdote in the book about this Aikido class.
Yeah.
The instructor had the students practice the same technique, shahanage, for 2 hours straight.
2 hours, I can only imagine the groans from the students.
Oh, yeah.
But I bet something shifted as they kept practicing, right? Like, did they eventually hit that flow state where it became less about effort and more about, like, pure enjoyment of the movement?
That's exactly what happened. You know, they moved beyond that initial resistance and they entered a state of deep engagement.
Yeah.
And it became less about achieving a specific outcome and more about the process itself.
Yeah. That reminds me of another Aikido story. This one's about me. We were practicing this technique, and at first, I was so focused on getting it right, on making it look perfect,
Right.
that I was actually making it harder for myself.
So you were getting in your own way, essentially.
Totally. But then I finally let go of that need for perfection. I surrendered to the process, and it was like the technique just flowed through me. It was effortless, powerful, and incredibly satisfying.
Beautiful. And that leads us to the third key, which is surrender. And this one can be tough because it requires us to kind of let go of our ego, our preconceived notions, and even our previous expertise.
Right.
And he has this great example about these 2 karate experts who are learning Aikido.
Okay.
And one expert, he was so attached to his previous knowledge that he kept trying to apply karate techniques to Aikido. And it actually hindered his progress. He wasn't fully embracing the new art. He was trying to fit it into his existing framework.
Okay.
But the other karate expert, he approached Aikido with the humility of a beginner, respecting the traditions and techniques of this new discipline. And guess what? He progressed much faster and ultimately achieved a deeper level of mastery.
It's like he was willing to be a blank slate,
Yeah.
to let go of what he thought he knew and be open to something completely new.
Exactly. And I think that's such a powerful lesson for all of us, no matter what we're trying to master. True growth often requires us to step outside of our comfort zones, to question our assumptions, and to be willing to learn from those who may seem less experienced or knowledgeable than ourselves.
It's like that saying, every master was once a beginner. And speaking of beginners, let's move on to the fourth key, which is intentionality. And this one's all about harnessing the power of our minds, setting clear intentions, and using visualization to achieve our goals.
Yeah, Leonard gives this great example about the Nikio wrist lock in Aikido. He encourages his students to visualize their fingers extending like laser beams,
Oh, wow.
penetrating through the attacker's face to the base of the skull.
I've tried this, and it's amazing how much more effective the technique becomes when you really focus on that visualization. It's like your intention amplifies your physical strength and precision.
Yeah, he even delves into this question of whether our thoughts can actually influence physical reality.
Yeah.
You know, using Einstein's famous equation, E=mc off, arguing that even the most groundbreaking scientific discoveries begin with a thought, a vision.
So we're not just talking about some feel-good self-help technique here. He's suggesting that there's real power in intentionally focusing our minds on what we want to achieve. Like we're tapping into this unseen force that can help us manifest our desires.
Yeah, and that brings us to the fifth and final key, and it's a fascinating one, the edge.
Okay.
This is where Leonard explores the paradox of mastery, the delicate balance between discipline and daring.
So on the one hand, masters are deeply committed to the fundamentals, to consistent practice and incremental progress. But on the other hand,
Yeah.
they're also the ones pushing boundaries, challenging limits, and taking risks. It's like they've got this incredible blend of caution and courage.
Exactly. To illustrate this, he uses the example of Chuck Yeager, the legendary test pilot.
Okay.
Yeager was a staunch advocate for experience and consistent practice, yet he was also known for his, fearless pursuit of pushing the boundaries of flight.
I mean, there's that incredible story about Yeager preparing for the first supersonic flight.
Yeah.
And he went on this wild horseback ride the night before
Fush.
and ended up spraining his shoulder.
Oh, no.
Now, most people would have seen that as a sign to back down, to postpone the flight.
Yeah.
But not Yeager. He was determined to go ahead with the mission, even if it meant figuring out a way to close the hatch of the X-1 rocket plane using a broom handle because he couldn't use his injured arm. Talk about commitment.
That's the essence of the edge, right?
Yeah.
It's about finding that balance between respecting the fundamentals and having the courage to push beyond your comfort zone, to embrace the unknown and take calculated risks in pursuit of your goals.
And it's not just about physical daring. Leonard talks about pushing the edge in all areas of life. Whether it's trying a new creative approach in your work, having a difficult conversation in a relationship, or simply confronting a fear that's been holding you back.
Right.
It's about recognizing that growth and mastery often lie just beyond the boundaries of what feels safe and familiar.
And that's where things start to get really interesting. Because once you understand these 5 keys, you can start to apply them to virtually any area of your life, not just specific skills or disciplines.
So we've got these 5 powerful tools, these insights into the path of mastery. But how do they actually play out in our lives? How do we take these concepts and translate them into real-world action? That's what we're going to explore next.
And what's really cool is Leonard doesn't just give us these 5 keys and say, okay, good luck, figure it out. He actually dedicates a good chunk of the book to exploring some of the common pitfalls that we encounter on the path to mastery. And I think this is where his insights become even more valuable.
Okay, so what are some of the traps that we should be looking out for? I know he talks a lot about our culture's obsession with instant gratification, but are there others?
Well, that's definitely a big one, right? He argues that we're constantly bombarded with messages that are promising quick and easy results, whether it's fad diets or get-rich-quick schemes or, those learn a language in 30 days programs.
Right. It's like we're constantly being sold this fantasy of effortless achievement, which makes it even harder to embrace the long, often challenging path of mastery.
And those quick fixes can be really seductive because they give us this illusion of progress, right?
Yeah.
Without actually requiring any real effort or commitment.
Right.
But ultimately, they just keep us stuck in a cycle of superficial learning and fleeting satisfaction.
Yeah, it's like we're building our house on a foundation of sand instead of solid rock. So besides that quick fix trap, what other pitfalls does he highlight?
Well, another danger he points out is becoming too fixated on the end goal.
Okay.
Goals are important, of course, but when we get so obsessed with the outcome, we lose sight of the beauty and the value of the journey itself.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like when you're so focused on reaching the summit of a mountain that you forget to appreciate the incredible scenery along the way.
Exactly. And Leonard argues that this kind of obsessive goal orientation can actually lead to burnout and frustration and even a sense of emptiness when we finally do achieve the goal because we haven't fully embraced the process of getting there.
It's almost like we've cheated ourselves out of the experience, so he's encouraging us to find joy in the process, to savor those small wins along the way, and recognize that the journey itself is just as important as the destination.
Precisely. And that leads to another crucial point, which is how we handle setbacks and plateaus. Remember that mastery curve we talked about earlier? It's not a smooth upward trajectory. There are going to be times when we feel stuck, when we question our abilities, and when we're tempted to give up.
Yeah, that's when that little voice in your head starts whispering, maybe you're not cut out for this, or maybe it's just not worth the effort.
Exactly. But Leonard argues that these challenges are not failures. They're actually opportunities for deeper learning and self-discovery.
Okay.
It's how we respond to these setbacks that ultimately determines our success on the path to mastery.
So it's not about avoiding challenges or pretending they don't exist. It's about developing that resilience and the mental fortitude to navigate those difficult moments and come out stronger on the other side.
And he actually gives us some practical strategies for dealing with these challenges.
Okay.
One is the importance of having a support system. People who encourage your growth, understand the path of mastery, and can offer guidance and encouragement when you're feeling discouraged.
Yeah, that's like having a team of Sherpas to help you climb that mountain. You might be able to do it alone, but it's a lot easier and more enjoyable with the right support.
Exactly. Another strategy he emphasizes is establishing a regular practice, not just in the specific skill that you're mastering, but in other areas of your life as well.
Right.
This can be anything from meditation or yoga to journaling or spending time in nature.
It's like creating this foundation of stability and routine that helps you stay grounded and centered, especially when you're facing challenges or feeling overwhelmed.
Yeah, and this leads to a really fascinating part of the book where he explores how to actually cultivate the energy and resilience needed for mastery.
Okay.
And he argues that many of us actually have these untapped reserves of energy, but we often block access to this energy through negative self-talk and fear of failure and resistance to change.
So it's like we've got this powerful engine inside us, but we're keeping the parking brake on.
That's a great analogy.
Okay.
And he offers some really insightful strategies for how we can release that parking brake and tap into our full potential.
Right.
One is the importance of taking care of our physical health, right?
Right.
He argues that when we feel good in our bodies, we have more energy and vitality to devote to our pursuits.
That makes sense. It's like trying to run a marathon on an empty stomach.
Yeah.
You might be able to push through for a while, but eventually you're going to hit a wall.
He also emphasizes the power of positive self-talk, right? Focusing on our strengths rather than dwelling on our weaknesses. And this doesn't mean denying the challenges that we face. It's about choosing to focus on the good, on our accomplishments, and on the possibilities that lie ahead.
Yeah, it's like that saying, what you focus on expands. If we're constantly feeding ourselves those negative thoughts, it's going to drain our energy and make it harder to achieve our goals.
And he even suggests something kind of radical, telling the truth. Not just to others, but to ourselves. Often we hold ourselves back by denying our true feelings or downplaying our achievements.
It's like we're wearing these masks to protect ourselves from vulnerability or judgment, but in the process, we're also dimming our own light.
And he encourages us to be honest with ourselves, acknowledge both our strengths and our weaknesses, and use this self-awareness as a springboard for growth.
It's like we're finally giving ourselves permission to be fully human with all our imperfections and complexities.
And that leads to another important aspect of cultivating mastery, which is setting clear priorities and making conscious commitments.
Okay.
It's easy to get really scattered and overwhelmed by all the endless possibilities in life, but by focusing our energy on what truly matters, we create a sense of clarity and purpose.
Yeah, it's like decluttering our mental and emotional space so we can make room for the things that truly nourish and inspire us.
And this, he argues, is where the path of mastery becomes truly transformative. It's not just about achieving a specific goal or acquiring a certain skill set.
Okay.
It's about developing a way of being in the world that is characterized by continuous learning, growth, and self-discovery.
So it's not just about what we do, it's about who we become in the process.
Precisely. And that brings us to one of the most intriguing and perhaps unexpected aspects of Leonard's approach, mastering the commonplace.
Okay, I'm intrigued. What does he mean by that? Is he talking about becoming a master chef or a cleaning guru?
Not exactly. He suggests that we can actually apply the principles of mastery to even the most ordinary, everyday activities.
So it's like finding the extraordinary in the ordinary.
Yeah, he uses the example of driving. Most of us view driving as a chore, right? Just a means of getting from point A to point B. But he suggests that we can actually transform even this mundane activity into an exercise in mindfulness and skill. He encourages us to approach driving with a heightened sense of awareness, paying attention to our surroundings, the condition of our car, our own physical and emotional state.
Yeah, it's like we're bringing that same level of intentionality and focus that we might bring to a sport or a creative pursuit to the simple act of driving. And I bet it makes the experience a lot more enjoyable and even safer.
Exactly. And he talks about applying this to other everyday tasks like cooking, cleaning, even having a conversation. It's about finding that sense of flow, of being fully present in the moment no matter what we're doing. And this, he argues, leads to a profound shift in our experience of life. We start to see everything as an opportunity for practice, for growth, and for mastery.
I love that. It's like we're turning our entire lives into a dojo, a training ground for developing our full potential. And I imagine that kind of mindset spills over into all areas of our lives, right? Our work, our relationships, our health, everything.
Exactly. And this leads to a really powerful insight that he offers, which is that mastery isn't just about specific skills.
Okay.
It's about mastering ourselves, our thoughts, our emotions, our reactions to the world around us.
So it's like we're taking all those tools and techniques we've been learning and applying them to the most important project of all, our own lives.
Exactly. And he argues that the same principles that apply to mastering, like a sport or an art form, can be applied to mastering our relationships, our careers,
Yeah.
our overall approach to life. He even suggests that mastering relationships might be even more challenging than mastering a sport because it requires a deeper level of self-awareness, empathy, and the willingness to surrender our ego.
That makes sense. Relationships can be messy and unpredictable, and they often push us outside our comfort zones in ways that other pursuits don't.
And he encourages us to apply those 5 keys to mastery to our relationships as well. You know, finding a good teacher or mentor, practicing communication skills, surrendering our need to be right, setting clear intentions for the relationship, and pushing the edge by being vulnerable and authentic. And he reminds us that mastery in relationships, just like in any other field, is a journey, not a destination. It's about continuous growth, evolution, and the willingness to show up fully for ourselves and for the people we love.
That's such a beautiful way to frame it. It's like we're constantly learning and growing alongside each other, supporting each other's evolution, and creating something truly extraordinary together.
Yeah, and he wraps up the book with this wonderful anecdote about an encounter with the legendary mountain man in Big Sur.
Okay.
He was invited to the mountain man's cabin, and as they were talking, the mountain man asked him for advice on how to become a learner.
So here's this seasoned mountain man, someone who's clearly lived a rich and full life, asking for advice on learning. I love that.
Yeah, and Leonard's response was so simple, yet so profound. He said, to be a learner, you've got to be willing to be a fool.
Whoa, that must have caught the mountain man off guard. I mean, who wants to be a fool?
Right. But then he nodded thoughtfully and said, thanks.
Wow.
And that seemingly simple exchange actually sparked this whole cascade of insights for Leonard about the relationship between mastery and the willingness to embrace our inner fool.
Okay, I'm starting to see where he's going with this. It's like we need to let go of that fear of looking silly or making mistakes, that need to have all the answers.
Exactly. He argues that true learning requires us to embrace our curiosity, to approach new experiences with a sense of playfulness and wonder, and to be willing to stumble and fall along the way.
You know, think about a child learning to talk.
Yeah.
They're not afraid to make mistakes, to babble and experiment with sounds. They're just completely immersed in the process, and that's what allows them to learn so quickly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he suggests that we can reclaim this childlike sense of wonder and playfulness in our own learning journeys.
Right.
It's about letting go of our need to be perfect, to have all the answers, and embracing that messy, joyful process of discovery.
So it's not about becoming foolish. It's about accessing that inner fool, that part of us that's curious, playful, and unafraid to explore the unknown.
Yes. And that brings us to the final provocative question that Leonard leaves us with. It's a question actually posed by Jigoro Kano, the founder of Judo. Are you willing to wear your white belt?
Yeah, it really is a powerful question, isn't it? What white belt are we each willing to wear? Because it's so easy to get comfortable and to think, oh, I've got this area of my life figured out.
And that's precisely the danger, isn't it? The moment we think we've arrived, we stop learning, we stop growing, and we miss out on all that richness and depth that comes with embracing the beginner's mind.
Yeah, it's like we're trading in this vibrant tapestry of mastery for a faded, predictable snapshot.
And that's the beauty of this question. Are you willing to wear your white belt? It's like this invitation to step outside our comfort zones, to shed those limiting beliefs, and approach life with a renewed sense of curiosity and wonder.
So where might you, the listener, be holding yourself back from truly embracing that beginner's mind? Maybe it's at work where you've been doing things the same way for years and you're hesitant to try a new approach.
Or maybe it's in a relationship where you've fallen into these predictable patterns and you're afraid to be vulnerable or express your true feelings.
Yeah, it could even be in your personal growth where you've been putting off pursuing a passion or confronting a fear because you're worried about failing or looking foolish.
Whatever it is, Leonard's message is clear. Embrace the discomfort, Embrace the unknown and embrace the possibility of looking like a fool, because that's where the real growth happens. That's where the magic unfolds.
It's like we're being invited to trade in our fear of failure for the joy of discovery.
And that's a trade worth making, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. Because ultimately, isn't that what mastery is all about? This continuous journey of exploration, growth, and becoming the most authentic, fully expressed versions of ourselves?
And that journey begins the moment we decide to put on that white belt, step onto the mat with humility and an open heart, and embrace the challenges and the triumphs that lie ahead.
So, dear listener, what will your mastery journey look like? What white belt are you willing to wear today? Remember, the path is there, waiting to be discovered. All you have to do is take that first step.